It's Will.
And I'm Mike. Hello.
It's First Watch, the show that's part review, part reaction. We have something very special today because I think this will be the first episode in which we drastically disagree on something. We have the Soul Team 6 film DVD box set here. It's all Blaxploitation films. And the first one we watched was Black Gestapo. This was released in 1975. The director's name is Lee Frost. He's also the co-writer on the film. Rod Perry, I believe, is in this movie. Yeah, who was in SWAT. The OG SWAT, the TV show, and I think he was also in the Colin Farrell movie, and he's been in some other stuff like that, and various other actors kind of like from that era.
Yeah. Don't know any of them.
So, I really like this movie, and I think that Mike really did.
I did not like this movie very much.
One of the things that struck me is like, and maybe this is going to sound ludicrous, but one of the things that struck me as genuinely like genius about this movie is that and this is maybe what you hated about it, it's so badly made. Not that it's like a bad movie in the sense that it's like, let me clarify what I mean here. If you were to make a movie that was terrible, but you were clearly a professional filmmaker, you could be like, that movie is terrible. This movie looks and feels like someone made it in their backyard with like a handheld Super 8 camera and their friends. Like, this is not a professional quality, like the people involved in this movie, I'm not trying to insult the movie. I'm saying for a movie that was made with that few resources on that, like the only thing in this movie that would have cost any money was blowing up that car.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was probably just the junker that they got.
And the rest of it was just like, you could have filmed it at your friend's house. You could have filmed it like at a store that maybe your friend works at.
With no lights.
No lights. No, I'm like, the sound, like when it started, I was like, is this a bonus feature that we're watching, or is this the movie?
It was the movie. It sounds terrible. My big thing is like, the plot's not bad. It's fine. It's whatever. It's just so poorly made. And I get if you don't have money, but like there's things in it, like the editing, like there's clearly very little attention paid to the editing, and things just happen, and there's weird cuts. The acting's atrocious.
It's not that bad. It's
and
not
I get
bad,
it's a blaxploitation. There's random nudity, and it's just like,
okay, so
this is probably the worst film we've seen.
No, well, production quality wise,
yes,
I don't think it was the worst. There's no way this movie is worse than Deathstalker.
Deathstalker was fun. There's no way.
Though. But the plot of this movie is fun. Really... Yes, it was.
No.
So you have this group of black radicals in a neighborhood in Los Angeles. This is in Watts, right?
Yeah.
And they get money from the government, right, to form this like neighborhood watch organization. And they're ineffective because they're not using violence, and there's this white group of criminals who are like drug dealers, and they run prostitution rings. It's like the mob, basically. And they're coming into this neighborhood, and they're like forcing women into prostitution, and they like beat that woman on the street, and they rape a black woman, and nothing that they're doing is having any effect. Like, they're extorting black businesses, and so they, like, part of the group splits off, they radicalize, they get weapons, and they start murdering these white people. And so, I mean, to me, like, and it's interesting because this movie was written and directed by, well, the co-writer and the director is a white guy. If this movie were made by a black director, black writer, and it were about black people taking on the moniker of Black Gestapo and dressing like Nazis and murdering white people, that would be like some of the most radical shit ever made. Like, as it is, it's obviously just like an exploitation movie that's designed to incense people and try to get attention, basically. But I think the central concept of at what point... Because you can compare this movie to the IRA, you can compare it to the situation in Israel and Palestine. Like, at what point do people who are the downtrodden people radicalize and turn to violence because they feel they have no other options? That's essentially like the central premise of this movie. And that's really, look, what are you laughing about? That's what this movie is about.
He's just going into depth. I just saw a bad movie that was made by some people who just wanted to make some movies.
They cut that guy's nuts off.
They did cut the guy's nuts
There's
off.
a scene where they break into this guy's house and he's in the bath and they cut his nuts off with like an old school shaving razor.
That's the only good scene.
No, the ending scene is really good too, and it's like Rambo
you missed
when
out,
the
like,
guy invades the house.
So the one guy who led the group initially, who's the more of the pacifist guy, who wasn't ineffective. At the end, he goes like Rambo, and he just like basically murders and tricks all these other guys. And it's just like, because the group who does radicalize becomes worse than the white people.
Right. So they start extorting the black business owners, and then the guy who originally started the group to be peaceful is like, well, you're even worse because you have become a black criminal organization that's preying on black people rather than protecting them. So yeah, he goes and murders all of them, and it ends up being contradicting its own point. But that's where I think it plays into this idea of white people making an exploitation movie versus imagine how much this would inflame people if it were like made by a black filmmaker and black, like the Black Gestapo were cutting white people's nuts off. Well, yeah, but that's not the case. Like, what are you going to do? You can't go back and remake the movie.
You're just going to say you didn't like it and not watch it again.
I thought it was really, and the other thing that, so we watched this with our friend Jack.
He loved it.
Yeah, he loved it. The other thing that Jack and I talked about, which we were partly like joking, but there's something about this film that feels like pure cinema, not in the sense that it's like, you know, purely visual and auditory and whatever, but in that this is not like a product of like a cynical machine that is designed to like crank out money to meet, you know.
No, definitely not.
It's like people were just like, no, people were like, we have a camera, we have some audio equipment, and we have people who can act. We're just gonna make a fucking movie. Like that's really is like it's. But come on, this movie is not as bad as like half of the student films we've seen.
Yeah, but I mean,
but
like,
those are the people who have resources, who are going to film school. Like for what they had and what they did, I thought this movie was awesome.
I disagree, but I don't want to sit here and trash it because I get it. You know, they had probably almost no money.
$12.
They made a feature film. You know, it wasn't to my liking, and
well,
I
that's
didn't
the thing.
like it, but like, you know, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, right?
Like
There's obviously worse
it's
films.
easy for me to say, like, because we're surrounded by equipment that's probably worth more than the budget of this movie, and it's easy for me to say we could make a better movie than this, but I haven't. And these people went out and they made this fucking movie, and now it exists on this DVD, and we're talking about it, so they've done more than I ever have. That's so, like,
true. It's very true.
I have to respect, and, like, again, if this were, like, you know, this is a bad example of these, but, like, everyone likes to talk shit on Brett Ratner, right? If Brett Ratner made a really bad movie, he still would have had... when Brett Ratner makes a
really bad movie.
I have a weird relationship with Brett Ratner because I love Rush Hour, right? But... he's made some really horrible movies, right? But when Brett Ratner makes a horrible movie, you're like, you have tens of millions of dollars, you have studio support, you have A-list actors. How did you end up with this piece of shit?
Yeah.
When these people make this bad movies, I'm like, these guys are fucking geniuses.
They get like, some leeway in that sense.
That's what I'm saying.
So, I mean...
what is happening in the gym right now? He's having a conniption.
He's just dying. He can't wait to get home and watch this movie.
I love how you talk about Brett Ratner.
Jim's a big Brett Ratner fan.
He did Red Dragon, right? Which was horrible.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you make a bad movie with Edward Norton, Anthony Hopkins, and Ralph Fiennes?
The Hercules movie with The Rock.
He made that movie?
That was amazing,
no.
Money,
that was amazing.
Tower Heist.
Right, that's the one where I'm like, isn't Eddie Murphy in Tower Heist?
Yeah.
No, it's Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller's in it.
Anyway.
I don't know.
I thought Brett Ratner made a movie with Eddie Murphy.
I don't know.
Daddy Day.
Anyway, because wasn't he's friends with him, right? Because he was directing the Oscars with Eddie Murphy in it.
Oh.
Anyway.
I don't know much about Brett Ratner.
Black Gestapo, and so you can see we're divided. Agree to disagree. But you know, if you like exploitation movies, if you like I think if you're like really into Tarantino movies and the movies that he draws from, I feel like you'd be like Crack House, that kind of stuff. You'd be into this.
Crack House is a masterpiece compared to this, in my opinion.
But Crack House.
What's your opinion?
But again,
maybe, right?
with Crack House, they obviously had money because Richard Roundtree is in that movie.
Yeah. Well, it's cheap, I guess.
Jim Brown is in that movie.
Like, I guess, but like if you're sitting there watching at home,
right?
I mean, give it a watch, see.
And this is like this movie is. We actually just looked this up because we were like, was that it's the quality is so bad. We're like, was that shot on VHS? So VHS was commercially available in 1976, and this came out in 1975. So it must have been like some really low grade film or something.
They just found in the garbage out back, a photo chem or wherever, or Kodaks. They just found
it's like a ruined reel.
The scraps, and they're like, "Fuck yeah, we're gonna make a movie." And they made Black Gestapo.
And where they edited it, like edited in someone's garage,
probably,
and on like the little film cutting machine.
Yeah. But check it out. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you agree with Will? Do you agree with me? Maybe it's the best film you've ever seen. Maybe it's the worst. I don't know. Somewhere in the middle.
I don't know if this is the best film that anyone has ever seen. But it's,
that's true.
but I really liked it for what it is. So yeah, and you get 5 other movies with it if you buy this Soul Team 6 set. So check that out. I think they're all from the 70s.
Yeah, we'll see.
We're going to watch more. We're going to come back and tell you what we think.